Welcome back to The Explainer. Today we're tackling a political system that's a real puzzle. You've got kings and queens, ancient traditions, but also modern elections and fierce debates. It can seem pretty complicated from the outside, but stick with me because once you see how all the pieces click together, it is absolutely fascinating. Let's break down the UK political system. Right, so this is the question that trips a lot of people up. You see the crowns, the palaces, the ceremony, but then you also see people voting and politicians arguing in parliament. So how on earth does that work? How can a country have a monarch as its head of state, but also be a modern democracy where the people are supposed to have the power? Well, that's the central mystery we are going to solve right now. Okay, here's our game plan. We're going to start with how people even got the vote in the first place. Then we'll dig into the UK's very strange unwritten rulebook. After that, we'll look at the relationship between the Crown and Parliament, see how power is really split up, and finally, where you and your vote fit into this whole picture. All right, first up, the journey from subjects to citizens. You see, to really get how the system works today, you have to look at how it was built. And the most important thing to remember is that the democracy we see today, it's actually a pretty new invention. I mean, it is wild to think about now, but if we went back to the early 1800s, Britain looked nothing like the democracy it is today. Sure, they had elections, but the right to vote? Forget about it. That was for a tiny, exclusive club of men who owned a ton of property. The vast, vast majority of people had absolutely zero say in how their country was run. But, of course, that started to change, though it was a long, tough fight. Just look at this timeline. The first big changes started way back in the 19th century, but it wasn't until 1918 that all men finally got the vote, along with some women. It took another whole decade, until 1928, for everyone over 21 to have a voice. And the voting age of 18 we're used to? That didn't happen until 1969. This wasn't a sudden revolution. It was a slow, century-long crawl to democracy. So, now people have the vote. But what kind of system are they voting in? This brings us to the government's foundation, its rulebook. And folks, this is where the UK gets really, really unique. So let's get on the same page. What even is a constitution? Well, put simply, it's the instruction manual for a country. It lays out all the rules, the powers of government, the whole legal framework. Every country has one, but they are definitely not all created equal. And this shows you the huge difference. On one side, you've got countries like the US or France with one single big document that lays out all the rules. But on the other side, you have the UK. There is no single document. Instead, it's this jumble of laws, traditions, and court decisions that have piled up over hundreds of years. The big debate is that a brilliantly flexible system or just a confusing mess? Which brings us right back to our big question from the start. Section 3, the Crown and Parliament. How do these two things, one ancient and inherited, the other modern and elected, actually manage to work together? The answer lies in this phrase, constitutional monarchy. That's the name of the game in the UK. All it means is that, yes, the monarch is the head of state, but their role is almost entirely ceremonial and symbolic. The famous saying is that the monarch reigns but does not rule. The real political power? That's somewhere else entirely. So what's actually on the monarch's to-do list? Well, it's a mix of tradition and constitutional duties. They do things like officially open parliament every year, and they have to sign every single law to make it official. They also play a critical political role by formally appointing the prime minister. But mostly they act as a figurehead, a symbol of the country that stays above the day-to-day political fighting. And you really shouldn't underestimate that symbolic power. It runs deep. When someone becomes a new UK citizen, this is the oath they take. Notice they're not swearing allegiance to a politician or a party, but to the crown, the permanent symbol of the country. It just shows you how woven into the national identity the monarchy still is. Okay, so if the monarch's power is symbolic, who's actually making the laws? That leads us straight to Parliament and how power is split between its two famous houses. Parliament is basically cut in two. First, you have the House of Commons. These are the members of parliament, or MPs, that the public elects. Their job is to debate and pass laws. Then you've got the House of Lords. These members are mostly appointed for their expertise in different fields. Think of them as a review committee. Their job is to check the laws and suggest changes. But, and this is the most important part, the elected House of Commons always gets the final say. And if you've ever seen clips from the House of Commons, you know it can get pretty rowdy in there. So who keeps everyone in line? That's the job of the Speaker. They're an MP, but once they get the job, they have to be completely neutral. They're basically the referee of Parliament, making sure everyone follows the rules and gets a fair shot to speak. All right, so we've covered the history, the weird unwritten rules, and all the key players. But we've saved the most important part for last, the voters. This is where you come in. This is how you make your voice heard in the system. It all boils down to a general election. The UK is divided up into lots of different areas called constituencies. And each one, voters elect one person to be their local MP. It's a simple system called first past the post. Whoever gets the most votes wins the seat. It doesn't even have to be a majority. Then, whichever political party wins the most of these seats across the entire country, they get to form the government. And here's the final piece of the puzzle. The leader of that winning party gets a formal invitation from the monarch to become the prime minister. They become the head of the government, the person with the real executive power to run the country. So there is a direct line from your vote to the person in charge. So there we have it. We've gone from a system where only a tiny elite could vote to one where everyone can, and from an all-powerful king to a symbolic monarch. And it's all held together by centuries of tradition instead of a single document. Which leaves us with one final question. Is the UK's unique political system an amazing example of flexibility that can adapt to anything? Or is it an outdated model that's long overdue for a clear, modern written rulebook? Well, that's the debate that's still going on today.